Hello. Okay, as some of you might know, I do a lot of things, and car detailing is one of them. And in this episode, we're going to talk about ceramic coatings, steps to use, little tricks that you can do as a DIYer to help yourself. So, now we're going to skip a lot of the formalities. I think most of us all know how to wash a car thoroughly. So, depending on the level of dirtiness, the three main steps you want to do is you want to wash it. Well, several main steps. You want to wash it, you want to clean it, you want to clay bar it, you want to wash it again, you want to do your step corrections, and then you want to do your wash one more time, and then what they call an alcohol wipe with a 50-50 spray bottle of rubbing alcohol and water. This car, it may look okay on camera, but it is absolutely terrible shape. Last year my daughter's car was in here for a couple of weeks, and I'd let this sit outside. My sprinkler would run, water would get on it, water would just bake into the old ceramic coating, which is okay. It's not in your clear coat, it's on top of your ceramic coating. So what you have to do basically is strip off the ceramic coating, buff it out once again, and reapply a ceramic coating. Now, like, I don't know if you can see it here, those are all water spots. They will not come out by hand. That's how bad this is. Like right in through here and running through here. I got most of it out, but I don't know if you can see them or not. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. Those water spots, you cannot hand rub them out. They are baked, and I do mean baked into the top ceramic coating that's already on it. So my job here is to actually strip it all off and redo it again, and that includes those steps that I just talked about. One thing that I want the DIYers to learn is how to figure out how clean your paint is after you wash it and clay bar it, because that's actually the most important step before you get into your buffing. You want to get all the dirt that's embedded into your clear coat if you don't have a ceramic on, or out of the ceramic, because as you're buffing, it picks it up, it carries it around with the buffer, and it can actually cause problems. So, little bitty trick here, right? So you wash your car, you got it clean, you're getting ready to start your clay bar. Okay, so one thing that you want to do if you've never done before is run your hand over it, right, like this, and it'll feel, well, it feels good, I don't feel any dirt, I don't feel any dust or anything like that, and I think I'm ready to go, but you're not. You're far from it. So part of the clay barring process, again, is taking the dirt particles out of your paint. You can't feel them like this, but they're there. And if you did an A and a B between this at this stage before clay barring, and you just went straight to buffing on one side, and then you did your clay bar steps on the other side, you will see a difference. If you did like a tape down the middle, like you see a lot of people on YouTube do. Now, excuse the camera, it doesn't have very good focal length. So the trick to this is, before you start, give yourself a baseline. And this is a little trick that a lot of these guys don't show you or tell you about, that actually will tell you just how much dirt you have in the paint. You take one of these, right? Not one of the heavy duty white Walmart bags. You want like one of these clear, semi-transparent brown bags. And then you come up to the paint, put your hand in it, like so, and you just take your hand and you run it across it. And that nice, beautiful feeling paint all of a sudden feels like a sandy beach, right? This is how you tell how clean your paint is before you move on to the next step. And like I said, if you skip this step and you don't get it right, it's not going to come out. Now, if you do this properly, your ceramic coating, if it's done right and you buff it out properly, will look just as good as anybody else's possibly will. So the step to that would be, after you get it washed, After you get it dried and clean and you start your clay bar, you do that first to get a baseline on how dirty your paint feels. Then you do your clay barring. Whether you use a manufactured clay bar like this, or if you do a standard traditional clay bar, doesn't matter. You want to do about maybe an 18-inch by 18-inch square at a time. And you do that for a few minutes and you may see the dirt coming out of the paint. You want some kind of lubricant. I'm just using regular water. Some of them call for some kind of other lubricant. You can just a quick detailer as well, just to provide some lubrication between the paint and this, because all this will do is skip across it now. So after you spray it down and you do a couple passes on your paint, you come back, you wipe it dry, and then you take this again and you run it across your paint. And if you've never done that before, you're really going to realize how much of a difference that makes. It's going to freak you out. You're going to like, oh my God, I thought my paint was clean, but I have no idea. What you're wanting to feel is nothing. Absolutely nothing. This makes your hand way more sensitive to imperfections. If you just run your hand across it like this, it feels perfect. And this feels great to me right like this, you know. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say, okay, well, I'm ready to go, but you're not. You take this, again, put it on your hand, and run your hand across it before you do your first clay bar. And you may want to go across it a couple of times with a couple of, you know, passes with the clay bar. So you'll do your passes for a couple minutes, take the rag, dry it off, go back to this, run your hand across it, and you may still feel some grittiness. That means you got to go back to this again and do this until it's completely smooth. If you get to that, then you're really ready to go to the buffing step, which is next, because that is really a defining point on how well your buff is actually going to come out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just a little bit of advice for all you DIYers out there if you want to do this themselves. Prep is king. Prep is everything on these cars. And this is actually the most important step. I mean, they talk about getting the dirt off. They talk about, you know, getting the 3-step, 2-step corrections done. And that's all fine and dandy. But it won't do much good unless you get that dirt out of the paint first. And your hand is not good enough. You take that plastic bag over there. You put it over your hand. You wipe it over it before you do your first clay bar to get an idea of just how bad that paint feels. Do a pass with the clay bar, come back with the plastic bag, and do that over and over again until it feels to where you feel nothing at all, and then you're ready to go. Okay, and as you can see, I mean, I'm going to do it before and after. This car, I mean, on camera, I guess it looks pretty good, but it's actually in horrendously bad condition, and it's my fault, you know. But again, getting back to this, you can see the water spots in it. Where are we at again? If I get the angle right. Yeah, there you go. You can see the water spots in it. And what that does is it gets the water spots partially out. You're not worried about getting the water spots out. You're worried about getting the dirt out, because the buffing will take out the water spots. Okay. Now that we got all the clay barring done, after you've gone over the car, you take that bag there again and you go manually run your hand down all the surfaces and find out the spots that you missed, because you are going to miss some spots. So take an extra 15 or 20 minutes to run your hand down the car, find the rough spots still, go back over them with a clay bar before the next step. Next step is your first cut. In this case, I'm going to have to get all those spots out. I got some of them off with the clay bar, but it didn't go deep enough. That's just by hand. Next thing to do is your machine polishing. What I'm using now is a heavy. It's an ultra cut compound. I'm going to cut real deep because I want to get all the ceramic coating that's actually on there off. And about that, just another note, when you're clay barring, the top surfaces are always going to have more dirt in the paint than the side surfaces. And you'll notice that when you're clay barring. When you're clay barring on the top, it'll drag a little bit differently. Now on the sides of my car, I still had a decent layer of ceramic coating, so it really only took maybe about 1/10 of the effort to get that clean as compared to all the tops, like the roof, the hoods, the front fenders, and the rear deck lid and all that stuff. So the thing to do now is to begin your heavy cut. You want to do about maybe 1.5 by 1.5 square at a time. Take your time. As it dries out, take your little spray bottle, spritz just a little bit of water to get a little bit more oomph out of your cut, and it'll lay everything over a little bit better. Okay, we're back. It's been about a week or so, week and a half. I've had some things I had to do, but since we talked last, I got it clay barred, I got it machine polished, and now we're doing the fine polish. Hopefully the camera can pick the difference up here, because now it is really substantial. I mean, it's a beautiful shine now. I don't know if you can catch it any better than what you did in the last video. I guess I'll tell when I start editing this. But I've got basically the top sides of everything on this side done. I started over there, but my pad wore out. I got to let 2 other ones dry so I can continue on. From last night, they're still a little wet. But as you can see, I'm trying to get a good angle here. If it was black, it'd be a lot easier, but you can get a bounce angle there, and you can just tell all the water spots are gone. There's a couple of white streaks, but there's nothing you're gonna do about that. I mean, it's a towel. The next step after I get it done is we're going to take it out and we're going to give it another bath. I mean, we're just going to wash it down, go over it with a Q-tip type of scenario, then bring it back in, then do the 50-50 wipe with the isoprolol alcohol and water via a spray bottle. So something like that right there. Get it prepped, and then she'll be ready for the clear coat. But here, I want to talk about a misconception here that you keep hearing people talk about on these cars, and it's called paint correction. You are not correcting the paint. You are correcting the clear coat. If you do a true paint correction, in order obviously to get to the paint, you have to strip the clear coat. That's a whole different level of labor, work, time, effort, preparation, and everything. When you're talking about a 2 and 3 step process, when they say paint correction, it's not paint correction. You're correcting your clear coat. Okay? So don't let them screw you around on the jargon here of what it is and what it's not. What it is, unless you have a single layer enamel coat or whatever like they used to have back in the days, then yes, okay, you're correcting the paint, you're taking the oxidation out of it, you're doing the same thing with the clear coat, but we need to clear up what is what and what it isn't. It's not paint correction unless you take the clear coat, clean off the paint, and then correct the paint. And if you're going to go down that far, hell, you might as well just reshoot it. Don't put a wrap on it. Reshoot it. So, here's another misconception. If you can feel the mark in your car, on the paint, or whatever the case may be, if you run your fingernail across the surface and you can feel whatever imperfection that is, this is not going to get it out. It's not. It's just too deep. You're going to have to get into some wet sanding and stuff like that. But again, let's be clear, that's not paint correction. That is clear coat correction. If your paint below that is substandard, fish-eyed, orange peel, which a lot of GM stuff is, this is not going to cure that. It's going to make it brighter. It's going to make it look prettier all the way around, but it is not, and I repeat, not paint correction. And let me give you a good example here. I got a little scratch on my fender. I'll put my cigar down. Got a little scratch. I'm going to see if I can bring into it. Right. It's right here. That's a light. That's reflection of light. I'm trying to get it to where I can maybe zoom into it. I don't know if it's picking it up or not. It won't zoom in that close. It won't do a macro shot. Anyway, there's a little bitty scratch right there. And again, there's nothing that a buffer's going to do about that. I mean, I can just feel it with my fingernail right here. And again, if you can run your fingernail over across it, this is not going to cure that. So, again, we are not correcting the paint. We are correcting clear coat. In order to correct the paint, you have to get below the clear coat, which means removing the clear coat. So, next time you see this, we're going to bring it back in. It'll be ready. It's going to be up in the air. The wheels are going to be off of it because those are going to get cleaned and ceramic coated as well. But that, again, is a job in and of itself aside from the car. So stay tuned. Okay, here's another quick tip. When you're polishing, when you apply it, you want to stay with the lines of the vehicle. In other words, if I can back up here, you want to run imaginary line, get all down through here, over to the seam, back up to the top, down. You don't want to try to get in this. You want to segment it, especially if it's not like a door or a big square area. You just kind of want to follow the lines. Also, as you're polishing, you noticed this part of the door here has already been done. And I just laid down a little bit here, and as you can see, it's blurry. When you're working this stuff, you want to work it until it's hard to tell whether you're actually spreading or not. It works itself in. It'll get shinier over time. I haven't wiped this door down at all, but if you look from about here and here, notice that looks a little bit shinier. As you're working it in, you want to keep working that in until it gets to where it's hard to tell whether you're spreading it or not. By that time, you're pretty much just about done. And in some of your better stuffs, like this Rupes polish that I use, you don't have to add water to it. You don't need to spritz it up or anything like that. You just work it in until it looks like it's kind of hard and it starts to reflect better. After that, you're done and you can move on to the next one. Another misconception is how you put the beads on your paddle. If you notice, some people will tell you to put a pea size here, pea size here, pea size here, pea size here, whatever. Okay, sorry for the light. But what I usually do is I just do an X pattern. That way the spread's better as well. Okay, now I've ran that through the process, never mind the shadow of this here. But if you look, it doesn't change now. That's what you're looking for when you polish these in. When I'm doing big panels, I don't wipe it off after each pass. That way I can see where my line is and I don't it's good to overlap a little bit, but you don't want to overlap too damn much. So I leave my polishing on until I get done with a section, say a door. Now, I did the flat surfaces, front to back. Now this little crease down that runs along the bottom, I haven't touched that. So I do that individually. That way I can concentrate on getting into that and polishing it out. But instead of trying to incorporate it with the flat panels, you're just fighting yourself. So the best thing to do when you change an angle like that, if it's that drastic, would be wait till you get the door done, or do it first, doesn't matter. but do that separate. And then the underside of that as well. You can do that and that at the same time, because now you're just kind of shifting angles. And that way, if you edge it, your orbiter's not going to stall either. Plus, I also did the washer mod on that Rupes. But those are just some things to consider when you're polishing these things out, and save you some time and some questioning on where did I stop and where did I start. You can put a little bit of overlap in it, but I generally don't wipe down the big areas and big surfaces until I'm done with them. That way I can see where I'm at. Okay, so we are pretty much done with most of the polish prep work. And like I said, all the water spots are gone. I got a couple of scratches that I'm just not going to be able to get out. But just to give a good example, you can see my reflection pretty good in the paint now. Now it's not black, of course. Black reflects always reflects better, but the paint's pretty much flawless. But I can give you a good shot. There's a decent one. You know, the reflection off the ground there. If this is black, it would be like, you couldn't tell what color it is because it would be straight mirror. It would look almost gray with the reflection. And a good example of that is this right here. What you're looking at is the reflection, not this here. That's my garage door. But there you go. Not a blemish on it whatsoever. What you're seeing that might look like dirt is a reflection of my ground, of the ground. So the whole car looks pretty much like that. So actually what I'm going to do next, this pad here's, she's getting pretty worn out. At this point, I'll use this as maybe a last resort polish, but what I'm going to do now is take the other pad that's good, and I'm going to spot a few things. I'm going to be using two pads. I'm going to try to find maybe some bad areas on here that I just couldn't get out before. I'm going to go back, redo them, and then polish it out with that pad over there. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so got the first coat on, got the wheels done. Completed the first coating. It looks good. I've got half the hood curing right now. It's going to take a few minutes because I put it on kind of heavy. So I got time to do this. So I'm using the Seaquartz UK 3.0. I've always used regular Seaquartz before. The gloss looks like it's going to turn out nice. However, I don't think it's quite as hard or quite as good as the regular Seaquartz itself. We'll know after, I guess, 24 hours after it cures and hardens a little bit more. But usually after the first coat, I can usually take the old Seaquartz bottle like this here, set on that fender, and it will slide. And it's not really doing it. So I'm kind of skeptic about the hardness of it, or how it actually hardens and seals, or how much actually gets taken off when you wipe it off. I'm leaving it on. This one's been on now for just about 5 minutes. A little past that on the old Seaquartz, it would start getting kind of tough to wipe off. You'd have to start using some elbow grease with that, and with this not so much. I'm starting to see it flash over right down there in the valley. It'd be better to see with a black car, of course, but I'm not 100% convinced that this is nearly as good as the regular Seaquartz. For that reason, I mean, usually once I do that first layer, and then it's usually one of my tests is to see if something like a piece of glass will stay stationary on an angle, and this does. It's not moving. So I don't know if this has a particular cure time after you apply it, like 24 hours, like some do, and that's fine. But usually by now, after the first coat, because I haven't touched this one yet, I haven't started the second coat. Everything for the second coat is from the hood itself, not the fender. So usually, this is usually pretty slippery already. It is with a towel, but it just doesn't seem like it's there.